What's up, everybody? I'm Adam. You're watching the Model Aviator channel. This week we've got another episode in our Model Aviator Updates series. In that series, we revisit airplanes that we've previously reviewed, tell you what it's like to own them over time, tell you about any issues that we've had with them, how everything's holding up, and any changes that we've made to the airplane or the setup. And then, of course, we'll give you a brand new updated demo flight and an updated setup. This week, we're checking out one of my favorite foamies in our hangar. This one is top 3 easy. This is the FMS 1400 millimeter Pitts version 2, and we've had this one a while. We featured this airplane in our 5th ever video on the channel. That review was in October of 2021, so we're coming up on 4 years owning this airplane. There's a lot of good information in that episode, so we'll put a link in the description to it, but you have to bear with the production quality. We didn't have the equipment that we have today, nor did we have the production quality knowledge that we do, so it isn't as well done, but still a lot of good information in it. At this point, we've got about 225 flights on this airplane. When it comes to fit, finish, and the wear of that, first off, FMS did a great job on this airplane. Out of the box, the fit and finish was great. Airplane looks good. Everything fit really well. We've had it for 4 years, so you're going to have those wing scrapes occasionally. There's a little bit of paint chipping off around the hatch where we've taken that on and off so many times, but considering how many times we've done that, it's actually not bad. And there's a random tiny little blemish here and there, but the truth is, if you step back 5 feet, this thing looks brand new. And full disclosure, there's a reason for that. We take good care of our foam airplanes. We fly them hard, but we handle them carefully. In the hangar, putting them in and out of our vehicle, taking them to the field, we go just a little bit slower. We're a little bit more methodical, and it pays off. That and storing them in LED lights in your hangar that doesn't fade the paint goes a long way in making sure that an airplane that gets flown a lot after 4 years looks this good. So when it comes to the electronics and the hardware and how all that is holding up, so far so good after 225 flights. The electronics, motor, and ESC are doing fine. We've had no overheating issues. And in the next chapter, when we tell you about some of the changes we've made, that becomes even more important. The servos are doing fine. They are not Metal Gear servos, but even after 225 flights, we have not had an issue with a single one. They're all still the stock servos. All the hardware, the ball links on the control horn end, the control horns are still firmly seated. The Z-bends and obviously the servo arms are still doing fine. We're not seeing any undue flex or anything there that makes the airplane do anything weird under normal flight forces. And of course the foam hinges, again after 225 flights, are doing just fine. And that brings me to a point that I keep making, and I'm going to continue to do it to try to educate people. Foam hinges and plastic gear servos get a bad rap. There are people that think you need to grab your cross and try to ward that off like it's some kind of vampire. It's not going to kill you. These airplanes are outfitted for specific purposes. This one was made to be either a sport plane or a scale aerobatic plane. The scale aerobatics that a real Pitts S2B, which is what this is modeled after, is capable of, it's pretty much the same thing as sport aerobatics that we know in model aviation. And the fact of the matter is, if the foam hinges and the plastic gear servos were not suitable for that, I'd have had trouble with them by now flying it the way I fly it. And you'll see, I'm not flying this thing in circles. I'm doing what it was intended for. When people have issues with stuff like that on airplanes like this, quite often it is because they are taking that equipment outside the design parameters. They're taking those hinges and they're forcing 3D airplane throws out of the control surfaces, taking them well beyond where they were meant to be deflected. That's obviously going to wear the hinges much faster. They're putting flight forces, because they're flying 3D and XA with an airplane that was never advertised to be such and never intended for such. When you do that, those flight forces, that deflection, Yes, you're right. If you're going to do that with it, you need better servos, you need better hinges. But for what this airplane was intended for, what they outfitted it with, it's just fine, or at least it sure has been for me. So when it comes to changes that we've made to our plane, it's important before we tell you about the changes we've made since the initial review almost 4 years ago, but we made some really significant changes to this airplane before that review and told people about it in it. So it's worth watching to get more detail on those, but we're actually the ones to come up with two key modifications to this airplane that became the standard for a lot of people. The first thing is we found it a bit underpowered. And there have been people that have done motor changes and more complicated things like that. You can certainly do that, but it isn't really necessary to do scale Pitts S2B aerobatics. We just changed the prop to a 16.8 Zor, and we sent the airplane up with our watt meter and did some pretty extensive testing to make sure that it was unloading enough not to hurt the ESC, and that was the determining factor. The motor could take way more amps than we were pulling, but we wanted to make sure that the ESC could take more amps, and it could. That added enough watts, enough extra horsepower, if you will, to really make the airplane fly impressive. You'll see the vertical we get with a 16.8, and it's important to note that after probably 220 flights, we flew this airplane stock maybe 4 or 5 times, just a handful of times. Did not like that, had to make a change. So well over 200 flights with this prop in Georgia in the heat and humidity, and have not had a single overheating problem. So it is a pretty solid modification for this airplane. The other thing that is really important is that the battery tray, the little hooks that hold that battery tray in, don't last. They wear, and that battery tray will come back. We ended up with the battery tray in the back of the airplane in the middle of a flight, and somehow, I think it was probably a little bit of skill and a whole lot of luck, I was able to land this airplane without hurting it. So we came up with a hatch mod where we just simply put a little bit of light balsa wood that as you put the hatch in, it doesn't add a step, you just put the hatch in, that wood rests against the back of the battery, and that tray can't come back. Have never had a problem since. And a lot of people have used those two modifications over the last 4 years to make their experience with this airplane much better, and in my opinion, they're very necessary. The only other things that we did to it back then were just purely cosmetic. I hated the pilot that was in this thing, so we actually bought one of the really lightweight foam unpainted pilots for the, I think it's a 60 size RV8 from Flex, and Heidi painted that guy up. We put him in so he matches the airplane. We painted the exhaust stacks and stuff like that. Pretty simple stuff. Now, since then, we have made a couple of changes. Now, I am not one to complain about the wheels on an airplane like so many people do. It doesn't bother me the way it bothers some. I think it's funny the way people complain about wheels, to be honest with you. But with this one, to quote my buddy John from Two Brothers, it truly did sound like a dumpster being drugged down the street. They were so freaking loud, like much louder than other airplanes with loud wheels. And so we did replace the wheels on this with Dubro Superlight foam wheels. And by the way, those are enough. Some of you guys that buy the low bounce wheels and put them on foamies, those work good, but they're heavier than you really need to support the airplane. This is a 8-pound plus airplane, and those foam Dubro wheels are quiet as a church mouse, but still hard enough, resilient enough to support the weight of this airplane, and they're much lighter than the low bounce wheels. So take a look at those when you're replacing the wheels on a foam airplane, particularly a light one. The other thing that we have done since then, and this is kind of the biggie, we went to AS3X Plus. We flew this airplane literally 200 flights on an AR620, just a standard Spectrum receiver, did not have any gyro stabilization at all. They came out with the AS3X Plus, The airplane was so good without a gyro. I had to see what it was like with AS3X Plus, and it is pretty impressive. So finally, we always compare our impressions now versus our impressions of the airplane when we originally reviewed it. Clearly, I love this airplane from the start. Again, I wasn't pleased with the power, but I was only a few flights in when I put that prop on the airplane and realized that was going to work. This airplane was amazing. I had some experience flying a Byron quarter scale Pitts back in the day, and this airplane flew better than that. And I've said that before and pissed a couple people off. Let me give some context. So this airplane has a lighter wing loading than the Byron, believe it or not. It's not that much smaller than that airplane. Maybe 5 inches shorter on the wingspan. I think quarter scale for a Pitts S2B is like 60 inches or something like that. This is 55. So it has a lighter wing loading, and this has more power after our propeller mod. The Byron Pitts flew great, but it had like a Rossi 61 nitro engine with that Biro drive belt system. It had barely enough power to get out of its own way, and it made, what you expect from a Pitts, it just couldn't deliver. So I think this thing flies better than that. It was one of my favorite foam airplanes, one of my top 3 then. Quieting down the wheels, to be fair, that was a pleasant change. I admit it, but putting AS3X Plus in this airplane, again, it flew great before. Had no complaints. AS3X Plus just takes it to another level. Everything that was great in the air, it's just more of that now. That's the best way I can describe it. Absolutely love this airplane. When I built my Hangar 9 Kristen Eagle, the plan was to get rid of this. Before I did it, I put AS3X Plus in this, and now I'm keeping them both. And that takes some doing on my part because this is how we store it and transport it. We keep it together. There's one thing I will say about this airplane. I would not want to have to take this thing apart and put it together at the field. It's, by today's standards, it's a pain. It takes a bit. Being able to transport it and store it exactly like you see it is really important to me. It flies so good. For those of you that might have to go to the trouble to take it apart and put it together, it's probably worth that. But I just know me, airplanes that take this much time to put together at the field, I tend to take something else, especially if I'm pushed for time. So just something to think about with this airplane. So our impression now, I mean, it's better than it was before. I still absolutely adore this airplane. So coming up next is going to be an updated setup page. We've got a different transmitter now. Obviously, it's got AS3X Plus. Our full AS3X Plus setup is there for you to utilize. One thing that I forgot to mention that is pretty important, one of the things we did to this airplane originally is we added some ballast in a strategic place to get the balance right. And the balance they had listed was wrong. I think now FMS has added some ballast themselves to the newer models of this that are coming out because people are telling me that they're able to hit our balance point without it. So they've done something. So if you watch the original video, just know that with a newer production 1400 millimeter Pitts version 2, you probably don't have to add that ballast. That's a good thing to point out. So coming up next, full setup page, and then an all-new demo flight where we take this thing out and have a blast. If you decide you'd like to add one of these to your hangar, we'll put some links in the description where you can go to FMS and do just that. When you go through those links, it helps us out and lets them know that you like what we're doing. When you support our channel, Heidi and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's it. Check out the setup page, pause it, do that to your Pitts if you'd like to. Enjoy the flying, and we'll see you next week with something cool with wings. I think a lot of modelers avoid models of the Pit Special as well as Kristen Eagles. And that's because a lot of them that have been made in the past, particularly small ones, are kind of twitchy and unruly and a bit intimidating. This one is not. This one is big and it flies like it. It's very smooth and easy to fly, even has very docile stall characteristics. I would say a reasonable amount of comfort flying a tail dragger, handling a tail dragger on the ground would be required to fly this one well. But I would also say that it isn't difficult as tail draggers go, and if you can handle a cub, you could handle this. As you would imagine, our flight times vary depending upon the pack. On a Spectrum 3600 Pro Air pack, we get about 6 minutes. On a SMC 4400, we get about 7.5. This one will do a decent tail slide if you play it right with the throttle. One of the nice things about aerobatic biplanes is in knife edge there's very little coupling. That's something I really enjoy about the Pitts. This model is capable in stock form, if you add some power with that 16.8 prop, of course, of doing anything that even an aggressive aerobatic pilot can do with an actual Pitts S2B. And this is the way we fly this airplane every time we fly it. So 225 flights of exactly what you're seeing, and that stock equipment's done fine. And here we're going to do a little slip to landing, which is actually how you land a real Pitts, so you can see past that long nose. Not my best. You know we're going to do that again. We've had a blast taking another look at this airplane and flying it for you again. This is one of our favorites. Take care of yourselves. Happy flying. We'll see you next week.